And welcome to a new episode of Digital Coffee Marketing Brew, and I'm your host, Brett Deister. If you guys always wanted to know how to do SEO better, you wanted to get to the top of the Google searches, you wanted to be just the top, and no one can touch you on whatever business, if you're doing it, or if you're doing it for a client, or if you're doing it for the business that you currently work with. Well, this episode is specifically for you. It tells you everything that you need to know on how to be the best at local SEO, SEO, and AI, because AI is coming up in the ranks. We always got to know how to do it better through AI sometimes. I know AI is not fun at times, but I get it. But you guys are going to be excited for this. I want to know in the comments below, what are you excited for this episode? And then have fun. All right, let's get on to the episode. The show, Bradley.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Brett. I appreciate it.
And the first question as all my guests is, are you a coffee or tea drinker?
Mostly a coffee drinker, but a little of both.
Do you have like specifics you like, or is it just whatever someone buys you, you're like, good enough?
I like kind of dark roasts. I prefer coffee black most of the time. Occasionally I'll mess with a little bit of cream, but I prefer black coffee and preferably the strong kind. And I like it like so strong you have to chew it to swallow it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if you really want to do that, you could always just do cowboy coffee. That really will be the chewing type of coffee.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that, but I do like a strong dark roast.
Do you mean like strong, like flavor wise, or like strong, like caffeine wise specifically?
Flavor wise, okay. But that typically is going to be stronger with caffeine as well too, so it's kind of a little of both. So.
Well, here's the thing that most people don't know is that actually dark roast doesn't have as much caffeine as the light to medium roast. So if you really want more caffeine, you got to go to the lighter stuff because that will give you the more caffeine. If you want
So why is espresso so caffeine rich then?
Well, it's because it's a smaller shot, and so you have more condensed into it type of a thing. But they're never dark roast actually, unless they actually specifically do it. But when you roast it longer, more of the caffeine escapes from it.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's also heating it has the caffeine escape too. So that's why cold brew has more caffeine than the hot coffee.
Gotcha. I do like cold brew. That's good, especially in the summer. So
I like it all year round. So even if it's cold, I drink it cold. Anyways, I gave a brief summary of your expertise. Can you give listeners a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, I primarily do, SEO it's not just SEO anymore, really. Now with large language models and AI chat and all that stuff, AI search, it's really instead of search engine optimization, search everywhere optimization. You know what I mean? It's like, or LLM optimization or something like that. It's basically optimizing for whatever platforms consumers would be using to identify local businesses that provide products or services that they're searching for. And so that's really what I do now is kind of focusing on, there's still a large component of search engine optimization, but that is quickly fading because of large language models and AI chats and all of that. So we really have to kind of evolve to stay relevant. And that means, optimizing for all these different platforms now, which has made our job a little bit, it's kind of interesting, but as in the kind of search engine optimization world or the SEO world, things are evolving very rapidly. And so in some ways, things have become easier for us, at least certain aspects of what we do because of AI. In other cases, it's become more complicated, more complex because we have more platforms now, channels, et cetera, that we need to be optimizing for because there are so many options available. It's very difficult. It's not like it has been for many years where Google was like the 800-pound gorilla. You know what I mean? Like the only game in town, so to speak. It's not like that anymore. And now local is probably one of the last things to be hit the hardest by all of the local or the AI chat stuff. But it still is losing market share. Like Perplexity is coming up quick with as kind of like a local search chat option. And so basically what I do is I work on trying to identify ways to help local businesses gain more exposure in their own local markets. That has traditionally been mostly with search engine optimization, trying to get more exposure within Google, but has really quickly morphed into just trying to build more exposure across as many different platforms and channels, avenues, et cetera, as possible, so that the business becomes gains much more exposure in their local market, becomes more of kind of like the only choice for local business or local consumers. And that's kind of what we do, is try to build brand authority for local businesses to gain more exposure across various search channels.
Is what you're saying is that like Google, like My Business used to be like the de facto thing, like you need to be on there. Is it still the de facto thing for local search?
Yes.
Or should you focus a little bit more on Perplexity?
Well, in my opinion, having a Google business profile, used to be Google My Business, is critically important for local businesses, because that's still where the vast majority of local searches occur, are through Google. Again, it is losing market share, but not as rapidly as general organic search, if that makes sense. So typically people are going to go to Google, and they're going to, if they start to do any kind of search for a business or a search query that Google knows has local intent. So typically, like, for example, if you're on your mobile device and you go to Google and you start to search in for something like, restaurants or Mexican food or something like that, the near me modifier or suggested search query always pops up, right? Because Google knows you're on a mobile device, and it's all about somewhere proximity and everything else. So the search is still something that the local search is still what a lot of people use, or Google Maps, to search for local businesses that provide products or services that they're seeking. But so I think having a Google business profile is still critically important. And not only, even if Google loses considerably more market share, it still would be valuable to have a Google business profile, because it's kind of an authority builder, right? It's a validator of the brand, because you have to go through a verification process. And so I even recommend to businesses that really don't serve just a local market to, if they can, still get a Google business profile, because it helps to validate the business further within Google, if that makes sense. So I think it's still valuable to have, for sure.
All right. So, I mean, you've emphasized, or you believe in like the ethical, results driven SEO practices. How do you balance achieving clients' goals with avoiding shortcuts or spammy techniques?
I'm not one of the types of SEOs that believe in the white hat, black hat, camps or whatever. I think SEO is SEO. If you are doing something to manipulate the performance of a website or a Google Maps profile or whatever in search, then you're violating Google's terms of service. So in my opinion, there is no hats. There are no hats, right? Like we just do SEO. Now, there are certainly some things that are spammy, questionable, things like that I try to avoid. But Google kind of frowns upon anything that we do to try to manipulate its results. So basically, we try to do things that don't trigger any sort of additional scrutiny or extra scrutiny, number one, or anything that will cause a suspension, or like for a Google business profile, a suspension or a re-verification. But there's almost kind of arbitrary suspensions and re-verification issues that happen with Google business profiles all the time. There's always bugs with Google, no matter what time of day, what time of year, there's always bugs, usually multiple bugs. So there are things that are always going to occur. But I think that, focusing in on local search optimization is critically important. But like I said, it's really kind of evolving into doing other things, which is good, because trying to abide by Google's rules, which are constantly changing and evolving too, is very difficult. And so this now does open up the opportunity for us as marketing professionals to help local businesses generate traffic sources, right, from other sources other than just Google. Because putting all of your eggs in that one basket is very dangerous, because, again, Google makes changes to its own quality guidelines or acceptable use policy all the time. And so what was acceptable today, tomorrow may not be anymore. And so if you rely 100% on Google, which I did for many years, because that's what I worked in, and it was almost like the only game in town, so to speak. So it was really like it was reasonable to spend all of our time focusing on Google. But now that's not the case, because of social media, because of language models, chats, and things like that. It's opened up the ability for businesses to diversify their traffic sources, where they are generating customers from and leads, right? And so how do we balance things without doing things so spammy? Well, we do a lot of testing, and when we find things that work, We typically will apply them. When we find things that don't work or that cause negative movement, we try to restrict use of that as well. But we are always constantly doing testing and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. But as I mentioned already, things are constantly evolving. So we could do a ton of testing this today or this week and find several things that work real well and start to deploy those or implement those on the client campaigns. And then in 2 months, that could be completely changed again. So digital marketing is not for the faint of heart right now. I can tell you that.
It's true. I mean, even on the content marketing side, it's definitely not the faint of heart anymore. I mean, you've got Google VO3 now, you've got all the other AI type of a thing going on. So, I mean, you talked about the evolution or the changing of Google's algorithm. So, what do you see as the biggest trends coming for local SEO? Besides, I mean, we talked a little bit about Perplexity, but is there other things that are coming up that they should be aware of?
Probably the biggest thing is just trying to you mentioned content marketing. I think the most important thing for local businesses right now, as far as kind of positioning themselves to perform well as this whole landscape it continues to change and evolve, is to really focus in on branded content. So, in other words, publishing a lot of content across a lot of channels that are always tying the products or services that the business provides back to the business. So, associating the products and services with that brand, and also for local businesses, also associating the locations in which they provide those services or products or services. So their service area, what even a local storefront business where like a dentist office or whatever typically wants to serve a local market, not just that one particular city. In other words, they want to be found by people maybe in an adjacent town or city, things like that. So having content that is always creating associations to the brand from the products and services they provide and also the locations in which they provide them is critically important. But you got to be careful with how you are now, at least got to be careful with dealing with Google about content marketing, because when I say publish a lot of content, if you do that on the same website as the primary website, so like on on a blog of the main website, for example, that can create competing pages, which is like it's potential cannibalization. I don't see cannibalization occurring much anymore. For that is where if more than one page on a particular domain is relevant to a particular search query, true cannibalization is Google will only select one of the pages to give an impression or to serve in the search results for that particular query. And so true cannibalization is where if you were to do like 10 back-to-back searches, like Ted Kubitis has a tool called Cora that does this, and it's the SERP volatility tester. And so you can take a particular search query and do 10 back-to-back searches, and it will show you the top 100 results for each of those searches for that particular query. And true cannibalization would show like, for the first 3 searches, this one page appeared in whatever positions they were in. And then search 4 and 5, it was a different page that appeared in whatever positions they were in. And that's showing only one page showing at a time. But now I don't see cannibalization occurring so much, but what I do see a lot of is competing pages, which is where Google will serve more than one page from the same domain for a particular search query. But they'll both 2 or more pages that have been served from the same domain will be lower in the search results than one page would have been had there only been one page on the site relevant to that query. So in other words, if there was only one page relevant to that query, it likely would have been positioned much higher in the search results than if there are 2 or more, where Google may show them in the search results, but further down where they're likely never going to get seen by the Google user. And so I bring that up because one of the old, you mentioned, I'm assuming you're into content marketing, but as an SEO professional, we did a lot of content marketing for local businesses for many years. And that was one of my primary methods, almost the sole method that I would get local businesses results with, was just blogging consistently from their blog and then republishing that blog content out on their social media profiles and things like that. That worked incredibly well for years. But now what happens is, for those of you that are familiar with SEO, there's been one of the major updates. There's dozens. I mean, they do a major update almost every month now, Google does. But the helpful content update had 2 major rollouts of that. And the helpful content update was specifically Google's way to address this over optimization and redundancy, like this duplication of pages and content on the site. for example, a lot of local businesses, like I work with home service contractors, my own local SEO agency, I really just work with tree service companies. And in the tree service industry, there's a multiple industry or multiple services: tree removal, tree trimming, stump grinding, et cetera. And so usually a tree service company wants to target a fairly large service area, 2 or 3 counties often, right? And so usually in every county, there's going to be a list of cities and or towns, census designated places, incorporated communities, unincorporated communities, et cetera. And so what we've done in SEO for years in local SEO was we would create a separate page for each service times each city that they wanted to rank in. So let's say that there was 3 counties and a total of, let's just, for simplicity's sake, say there was 20 cities or towns in those 3 counties that they wanted to target. And they had 3 main services: tree trimming, tree removal, and stump grinding. Well, by traditional local SEO tactics, we would have had 60 pages, right? Tree removal, city 1, tree removal, city 2, tree removal, city 3, tree trimming, city 1, tree trim, so on and so forth. That now Google came out with the helpful content update as it relates to local, specifically to address stuff like that, because it was bloat, it was redundancy, it was duplicated content, because it was saying the same thing over and over and over again. The only thing that changed was the city modifier, right? The location modifier. And so that was a very inefficient way. We all did it as SEOs. We had to. That's how we got results when it was a keyword-based algorithm. It is no longer. Now, because of AI, large language models, Google's own is integrated into its algorithm. It understands language much better. And now we should be optimizing for entities, which has, this is what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned to you, in some ways, the recent changes have made our jobs easier. And that this is specifically why I mentioned that, was because now the best way to optimize local sites is to have one page for each product or service that they provide, one page for each location that they want to target. And you associate, again, I keep talking about associations. That's what the semantic web is. It's how entities relate or associate with each other, relate to or associate with each other. And so we create associations between product or service pages and the location pages through internal linking. And so now in that same example that I just described a moment ago, that let's say 3 primary services and 20 locations, instead of having minimum of 60 pages now you would have 3 plus 20, so 23. So a third of the number of pages on the site, and achieve the same end goal, but now it's much more efficient for Google, because Google's not using a bunch of resources, which is why the helpful content update was rolled out, by the way. It was because Google was very public about, ever since the onset of AI and AI writing assistants and things like that, there's been this proliferation or explosion of content on the web, and Google can't keep up with crawling and indexing everything. And so that's why it applied this kind of helpful content update, was to eliminate or punish sites that are using more resources than necessary. Do you understand? And so to get back to what you were saying, branded content, like publishing branded content to always create associations between the brand, the products or services it provides, and the locations in which it provides them, is critically important. So how do we do it without publishing too much content on the site to where you create competing pages? Do it with an external blog. And so that's kind of where I think most local businesses right now stand to position themselves to perform well, and how things are evolving would be to start hiring content marketing or local marketing or SEO companies or whatever that can start to publish branded content across various platforms, but use the source, the content source, as not the primary website, but an external blog. Might be an extension of the brand. So an example of that would be like using something like Google Sites, so sites.google.com, or Blogger, Tumblr, WordPress, Weebly, Strikingly, any one of those. Medium. Medium's a great blogging platform. You could use Medium as an external blog, because then you can publish as much, or the business can publish as much content as they want, and it's not going to be competing with the content on the main website because it's on a different domain. That can also end up becoming link building content. It can also be used. You can use that as kind of a way to publish a lot of content across different platforms, because different language models ingest content from different platforms. So it's important to try to be ubiquitous. In other words, try to get content out, published as many places, your content published everywhere on the web as much as possible. And that's what I tell local business clients now.
Got you. So blogging is coming back, at least for local SEOs, because blogging is, well, I mean, we've been told, just like email marketing, it's dying, but I never think any of this content is ever really dying. It's just not as popular as before, is really what it is.
Right. Well, and that's a great, as a matter of fact, the fact that you just brought that up was when I say blogging, yeah, like traditional just text based blog posts are, people have short, our attention spans keep shrinking. And people don't want to read a wall of text anymore. They don't. That's another thing, just on page optimization. I've noticed with local businesses, with local SEO campaigns, that if you can break a page up that was typically like, again, 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, if we wanted to improve the optimization of a page, what would we do as SEOs? We go throw more words onto the page, right? We would. It was just like we go in and we just try to increase the density, add more words. Oh, it's only 1,500 words. Well, let's make it 2,500. That ought to fix it, And we did all this spammy stuff as SEOs because that's what we had to do. But now we don't have to do that anymore. And so what I'm saying is now, like, as a matter of fact, big walls of text or big, like long form articles, when it really doesn't need that because you're trying to make it rank, that's not necessary anymore. And so breaking up the text into multimedia and engaging elements within the page, like putting cost calculators, like estimate, like for tree services, like a stump removal cost calculator, something like that, where you can get the visitor to engage with the page. Putting AI voice, text to speech summaries of the main sections of the page, like, and then having a little audio player button next to the H2 heading for each section, where somebody can click in and they can hear a text to speech reading of the content. Again, that's an engagement signal to Google that the visitor, the human, is engaging with the page, and it's also adding multimedia to the page, which the language models are ingesting. So instead of just doing walls of text, if you can add multimedia to a page, which would include infographics, images, audio players, videos, cost calculators, or something that they can engage with, all of that is going to improve the performance in Google search, but also improve the language model's ingestion of the content in multiple formats. So that, again, now we're talking about the branded content being consumed by these language models in multiple formats, which gives it a greater chance to be recalled or mentioned when somebody is searching for something that would be relevant to that business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's almost like we should rename blogging now to be like multimedia blogging or interactive blogging, because you want them to interact more than you just want them to just read.
Google is using engagement signals now as more of a validation of it being a good business, something that people are interested in, right? And that's it. And that's, I understand why Google is doing that, is because that's much harder to spam or to fake, right? As SEOs, we've always learned how to manipulate by faking things, but it's much more difficult to fake engagement, and so that's why Google's placing a lot more weight on engagement signals and how visitors interact with the site, et cetera. And that's why having those engaging elements on the page can help to improve performance in search, because it almost forces the visitor to engage, provide those engagement signals that Google's looking for.
Until someone figures out how to use AI to fake engagement.
That's correct. That's right. And I almost promise you that people are working on that right now.
So, I mean, even with that, where do you foresee the more advancement in AI for machine learning as well for local SEOs? You talked a little bit about Perplexity, but where do you see more AI at least helping local businesses with their local SEO?
Well, because a lot of stuff can be automated now, so they won't need the expensive agencies. And I'm an agency owner. I got multiple agencies, in fact, and but I think it's the implementation of how to integrate AI into their businesses that most businesses are going to need help with, right? It's not necessarily like, I mean, there's certain tasks and functions that can be automated or handed over to an AI or an AI agent that can fix it. But I think it's also developing custom solutions using AI for businesses' needs, because there are going to be standard things that, like, a particular business industry there would be relevant things that AI can accomplish for that industry. But even businesses in a particular industry are going to have nuances with their own specific needs that I think AI implementation is where there's going to be a lot of growth potential for agencies like myself, but also for businesses if they become early adopters of trying to integrate AI into their business and have custom solutions made, it will give them a competitive advantage over all their other competitors. You see what I'm saying? And look, I invest with an AI development company now to develop AI agents for my agency and for some of my students, because I teach local SEO as well and things like that. And it's not cheap, it's expensive. But the thing is once you have an app or an agent developed that does something very unique, then you can monetize it, right? Not if it's for a local business, it's literally just going to typically it's just going to help their bottom line. So it's been monetized by increasing their revenue, reducing maybe overhead, ongoing costs, things like that. But as an agency, if you develop AI agents that can produce, that would be relevant or valuable to more than one business, and again, I usually start with developing things for my own business. And then if I see where it can be applicable to other industries that I work with, now it becomes a product that I can monetize potentially. So as an agency, I can see not only implementing AI solutions for local businesses as another source, but then also reselling those solutions to other businesses in that same industry, or similar industries, if that's clear.
Yeah. And so what advice do you have for business owners trying to navigate like the best practices for SEO? Because I'm pretty sure there's still out there old information or information that's not correct. And so how do you do that? Because I mean, everybody's trying to like get their old stuff to be relevant again, even if it's not relevant.
Great question. I think one of the biggest things to do is right now would be to do kind of an audit of the site, like analyze the content and the pages and everything, and look for bloat, look for redundancy, duplication, and eliminate it. It's almost like I use this as an analogy. It's like a website that has a lot of outdated content or too much content and all of that. It's like going swimming with bricks tied around your neck, right? It's very hard to go swimming, come up for air when you've got all those, all those pages, all that content, outdated, old content, things like that. All of that is like bricks tied around the website's neck. And you should eliminate that stuff, prune that content, redirect or consolidate pages, all of that kind of stuff to try to make the site more efficient. Narrow the focus of the site, and it tends to perform better. Narrow the focus of the site to the more specifically the products or services that the company provides and the locations in which it provides them, and get rid of the bloat. Then if you want to continue to try to market again, instead of trying to revive old content, start new and develop content that can be turned into multimedia formats like we just described, and then work on publishing and distributing content across platforms, as I mentioned previously. So right now is a really good time for local businesses to kind of do an overhaul of their digital presence, their website specifically, make it more efficient, consolidate, narrow the focus of the site to just the essentials, because that's going to make it much more efficient for Google to crawl, which makes it tend to perform better. And then focus in on just really developing a content marketing strategy, and then stick to it. Like right now, the most important two most important things in local search is branded location authority, which again, publishing branded content across multiple formats will build that branded location authority. And then site efficiency, which is an on-page thing, an on-page optimization thing. So those two things, so off-page is building brand authority, on-page is site efficiency. If you do those two things in tandem right now, you're going to win in search. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I mean, I could be wrong, but I can only see those two components becoming more important to perform well in a local search environment, not just Google, but just across the board, so to speak.
What excites you the most about the future of local SEO and digital marketing? Where do you see yourself and your team focusing next?
More on the marketing sides than just the technical side of things. I've been in local SEO and in the SEO business or industry now for 15 years. And, I teach it, and I've been teaching it for 10 years now as well. So I coach others to learn how to create a business around local SEO. Okay. And, what I've seen is most people come into this industry with the idea of if they learn how to rank stuff, which again, that's becoming like not even relevant anymore. I mean, it still is now, but it's changing rapidly. But I've seen over the years a lot of SEOs, aspiring SEOs, come into this business to think if all I got to do is learn how to rank stuff and I will be financially free, I'm going to be set, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case, man. Learning how to rank stuff is only a very tiny portion of being effective, right? because you can rank a page, but if it's not set up, doesn't have good copywriting, it's not set up for conversions, et cetera, what is the purpose of that page to be? Like, it's not, if it doesn't produce the desired end result, ranking is just it's just a vanity thing, right? And so I think studying marketing and really developing marketing and marketing messages and offers and things like that to help a business to convert more visitors, not just to generate more traffic, but to then convert them, because you got better offers, better copywriting, better presentations, better, all of that. I think that's more important. And then also looking for and trying to identify ways to market outside of traditional search or even AI search, but do more focused, like direct response marketing type of stuff, right? So for example, in the tree service industry, I've recently started looking at, like, how do we do like things, even like direct mail campaigns? No kidding. US physical mail, like direct mail campaigns to, like, for a tree service contractor that's in an area where there's a lot of golf courses, like to a, golf course maintenance managers, right? Because those, or property management companies that have, tenant buildings and commercial properties that have trees that need to be trimmed and things like that. And that can be stuff where you can get outside of traditional digital marketing and search, and instead do like direct response marketing to, property managers or golf course maintenance managers, things like that. And so I think I always recommend to my students in local SEO to identify one particular industry and go really deep into that industry, instead of going broad across multiple industries where you're never really effective in any one industry. Pick one and get to know that industry better than even the business owners do, so that you become invaluable to them and how to get results for the business owners, but also how to speak to the consumers of the products and services in that business or that industry. You see what I'm saying? So I think kind of, which is really funny, because all this technology has really brought me back to foundational marketing and sales principles. You know what I mean? That I really think now, if we can learn how to apply traditional and foundational marketing and sales principles to all this technology that we have available to us, that's where we're truly going to win. Not just becoming technology experts, but then applying that technology with proper marketing techniques, so to speak.
Yeah, it always comes back down to the old school marketing tactics. Like, word of mouth is still king, no matter how much we love all this new tech. Word of mouth will always be king.
That's right. 100%.
And so people listen to this episode and they're wondering, where can they find you online to learn more about you and your companies?
Well, I appreciate that. If you just search Bradley Benner, you'll find my various companies. Semantic Mastery is my company where I do coaching and teaching of local SEO and now, like, not just SEO anymore, but all the stuff that we've been talking about today, which is beyond SEO. The best way is just go to our YouTube channel. If you go to youtube.com and you search for Semantic Mastery, or go to youtube.com/@Semantic Mastery, you'll go to our channel. We've got over 4,000 videos. We've been publishing. I do a weekly Hump Day. We call it Hump Day Hangouts. It's a weekly SEO webinar. It's a Q&A webinar. It's 100% free. Anybody can attend. Every Wednesday we do that from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. That's why we call it Hump Day Hangouts. We've been doing that for over 10 years, about 10 and a half years now, actually. So we've got 550. I think yesterday was 549, episode 549. So I really enjoy this. And that's the best way to get connected with us, is just through YouTube, because you can ask questions, comment, whatever, and we'll reply back to you. But we have white label services and all that other kind of stuff. But yeah, just check us out on YouTube. That's the best way.
All right. Any final thoughts for the listeners?
No, this was fun. I appreciate the conversation. I really think right now is a good opportunity for, people that are kind of dealing in the marketing industries and traditionally with search and stuff. I think we need to be out there talking about this, because I think a lot of local businesses, and even, unfortunately, marketing professionals that aren't keeping up with this stuff, I believe are going to be left in the dust, like left behind. They're going to become non-relevant if they don't evolve. And so I think it's really important for us to be out evangelizing this kind of stuff right now, if that makes sense. So I appreciate what you're doing, Brett.
Thank you. Yes, it does make sense. AI is going to take over just about everything in marketing. That's right. You have to learn it.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah. Thank you for joining Digital Coffee Marketing Brew and sharing knowledge on local SEO and AI.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening to this episode, guys. I really do appreciate it. Just do a quick favor and just subscribe to the YouTube or Rumble or on any of your favorite podcasting apps and leave a review. It does help But I want to know what it was your favorite moment in the podcasting. Leave a comment below, and then I will share it in the next episode. So guys, hope you enjoy it, and see you next week as we talk to another great thought leader in the PR marketing industry. All right, guys, stay safe. Get to understanding how you can use SEO better. Leave a comment on what you learned the most, what was the most impactful. See you next week. Later.